Helloing everybody, and whoa, what's this? John is actually playing a modern video game on his channel? Gotta stay trendy, you know, so that one day I can make it on YouTube's one tab for such topics where I get to join Sonic Brain Rot.
Oh no! Blaze died!
Now, this isn't my primary video that I wanted to make. That is all done and recorded though. I just need to get some time to edit that thing. So since I realized that I haven't uploaded in a month, I don't want to revert back to my old 2021 upload schedule, so I decided, what the hell, let's make this short video. And what better game to talk about than one that I've been rather excited about, Killing Floor 3. Now, I'm not really gonna go into too much depth about this entire series because that's a whole different topic to talk about for another video, but to give you the short and sweet of it, Killing Floor is essentially if COD Zombies was directed by Ghostmain. It's more hardcore, more gritty, and oftentimes more fun, as big of a hot take as that might seem to some COD sweats who like supporting a company that's busy fucking over their voice actors. Developed by Tripwire Entertainment, Killing Floor is a first-person horde-based shooter where you drop on a map either solo or with a bunch of buddies, kill off a bunch of different zombies, Zeds, the woke agenda is coming for the undead it seems, survive however many waves there are, and bada bing bada boom, missions complete, on to the next one. And that's pretty much the simplest way how I can explain the Killing Floor games. There's a little bit more than just that, but once again, I think I'll elaborate a little bit more on that when I make a dedicated video on these games. Now, I have played a bunch of the first two Killing Floor games, and I really enjoyed them, but calling myself a Killing Floor fan is probably stretching it a little bit, but my enjoyment of these two classics did leave me rather excited for what they could possibly do for a third game, aside from making the Zeds look like foreskins. But as anything goes nowadays, something within a game's development seems to have rubbed some hardcore fans the wrong way. I heard some rumblings of people saying that was gonna make use of some hero shooter aspects, the aesthetic of the game felt off to some people, and all in all, it would seem that the newest entry to this franchise was met with a lot more skepticism rather than excitement. Well then, fast forward to the 19th of February of this year, as I was busy pissing myself with laughter from playing Avowed, here's the short to give you the reason why that is, I checked my emails and saw my request to join the closed beta was approved. So I quickly jumped on the download when I could, and come the next day, I finally played it and... oh boy, I'm starting to think people's skepticism was warranted, I'll tell you that much right now. But before I jump into the game myself, let me first just get some prerequisites out of the way. The version of the game that I requested the beta access to was the Series S version, for if you're curious about some visual things that you might notice while watching this video. And two, I just want to reiterate that this is only a beta, so what I say now might end up being completely different to the official launch. Don't you just love it when you risk a video getting outdated just to capitalize on some early hype for ad revenue? Am I not just so silly? Any case, allow me to start. So upon loading into the game, we're greeted by Psycho Mantis if he decided to cosplay as James Bond, and we get a staggering total of 3 modes to pick from, one of which being completely useless as we'll soon see, and the third option being the only one that you're willingly going to want to pick. But since this is a YouTube video, it wouldn't be very entertaining for the viewer if I didn't at least see what the beta has to offer, so I decided to press forward. One loading screen later, we're thrusted into this hub area called the Stronghold, which is just a glorified menu that you get to explore that doesn't really contain much stuff aside from this epic gamer pad that contains every other game Tripwire developed / published aside from the previous games in this franchise. So isn't that already a telling sign? But whatever, I decided to check out every single menu, which consists of an armory where we get to customize our weapons. Now I wonder where I've seen this before. Select a specialist as well as customize them. See assignments, which I take are just going to be special missions to get you more epic gamer points that only serves as bragging rights at the end of the day, as well as a store that has every single gamer's favorite item, a battle pass, or a supply pass in this game because being pedantic is more socially acceptable. There's also some weird crafting system in place here. You're actually able to customize your weapons even more, from stuff like your bullets to peripherals, so that's just something I find rather quite interesting, but for something like Killing Floor, it just seems a tad bit excessive, you know? Any case, I head over to the main computer where we get to select our missions, and in this beta, we only have a total of 3, so I mean, that's all good. After selecting one of them, we run up to this aircraft that's very reminiscent to the ones they used in the 2009 Avatar movie, and here's where the main meat actually begins. And oh boy, where do I even begin? Well, I mean, when it comes down to the game's actual control, we pretty much have the basics. We can move, we can shoot, we can ADS, and all that good stuff we've been able to do since 1992. But since this is a 2025 video game and we've long since received gems like Doom 2016, Titanfall 2, and Ultra Kill, this game decides to implement features like a dodge as well as a slide that all in all makes the game extremely smooth to control. But I mean, was this something we really needed? I'll elaborate on why that is a little bit later, but I don't know. For a game like Killing Floor, and how enemies spawn in, how many they are, and how they behave, I feel like revamping the controls in this way also kind of feels over excessive. It's like we don't really need this. But overall, I do think primarily that was just a me problem. But one thing I can't really excuse as much: what the hell is going on with the game's visuals here? To no one's surprise, which is a quite rather irritating trend I wish people would stop, the game utilizes the Unreal Engine 5. And look, I'm gonna be honest here, when I decided to apply for this beta, like I said previously, I applied for the Series S version of the game because, as we all know, I don't really like playing games on my PC because I use it mainly for work. There will be rather rare exceptions for if I decide to play a game that someone gave me for a review code or as a gift on Steam, and on top of that, maybe I'll just play something that's a little bit older, or when I know the PC version of a particular game is the superior way to play it. But come the flying fuck on, dude. I'll give this game one thing: it runs at a smooth 60 FPS with the occasional frame drop and the game freezing every single time a shiny achievement pops up on screen, which scared me every single time it happened because I thought the game was going to crash. But as you can see, the game is compressing shit super hard. I'm pretty sure they applied like 3 layers of FSR or DLSS or some shit, because there's this constant shimmering going on, which, yeah, not a big fan of that because it kind of washes everything out. And another thing you can clearly see is that there's not really a lot of visual polish when it comes to stuff like lighting, as well as certain textures and even the character models. I mean, just look at this scene right here and you try to tell me that this looks like the true next generation entry to your beloved franchise. One thing I will say though is that this game brought me a sense of nostalgia, because take a look at these PS2 circle shadows when zombies are in shadow locations or indoors. I have no idea why this is even something that needs to be in the game, but I guess here we are. Now, the reason this A doesn't surprise me and B it does is that A, yeah, I understand I'm playing this on the Xbox Series S, alright? I know this is the weakest of the big boy consoles, so a downgrade in graphics is to be expected. And B, I think that entire explanation is total horseshit. When you consider every single game that has come out on the Series S from day one to this game, having such a tremendous downscale in graphics is just terrible. I mean, we're talking about the same console that could still run Indiana Jones and the Great Circle at 60 FPS. Avowed, granted it's locked at 30 FPS, Stalker 2 with the exact same handicap, but these games look so much better, especially when it comes to Indiana Jones, considering that that game has a lot of open world elements with different NPCs that all look amazing, and I don't think I ever experienced any frame drops whatsoever. And the game still looked great. Another game that I feel looked pretty damn good and still ran consistently at 60 FPS was the Series S port of Immortals of Avium, and that game ran on the exact same engine. So the point that I'm trying to make is, if you're deciding on releasing a port like this on the Series S and half-assing your visuals to such an extent, then I really don't know why you're even bothering with it in the first place. I'm not really sure how the game looks on PlayStation 5, Series X, and PC, but this is just a really terrible display of how people are treating Series S users. Hopefully this is just a beta exclusive issue, but damn it, man, this isn't looking too good for this console. But aside from just pure graphical fidelity, the game just feels dull as a whole. When it comes to stuff like the menus, the 3 stages, the main hub, everything just feels so stale and lifeless. And I have no idea if it's due to the push for a more futuristic setting, but oftentimes the color palette feels like everything just blends into one another, making everything look the exact same. And the futuristic choice also kind of bogs down the designs of stuff like the weapons. These all just look like futuristic generic versions of ARs, SMGs, shotguns, and snipers. It all just feels so bland, and what makes it even worse, these guns feel so weak. Now, allow me to elaborate on that a little bit more. These guns aren't weak in the slightest. They're still able to tear enemies a new asshole with no problem, and that's the satisfying part. It's just, they sound weak, they feel weak, it's not at all satisfying to use them when the powerful feeling weapons were kinda like, you know, the whole selling point to Tripwire's games. Having that one aspect in both the weapons' visuals as well as their sound design just gets stripped away, it just kind of makes this game lose the overall identity that the series was always known for. But whatever, we've spoken about the controls, we've spoken about the graphics, we've spoken about the weapons look and feel, but when it comes to the overall gameplay, it just feels like a stripped back version of your typical game of Killing Floor. You have your survival and objective modes, you still have all these enemies like the Zeds, Sirens, Flesh Pounds, High Skrakes, so everything still checks out. It is a Killing Floor game at its core. So you go from wave to wave completing objectives or surviving the onslaught, and after each wave you head over to this merchant to buy or sell weapons based on what you feel would be the best for your current situation. But now for this entry they decided to add some new goodies for us in the form of special items or deployable items. Deployables are pretty much a no-brainer. You drop either ammo, health, armor, or whatever fancy shit there is for either you or your teammates to pick up. We've seen this before. And this smart tool which is used to unlock certain chests around the map, as well as activating certain items like turrets, so I guess that's kinda neat. There are some other things like traps and lures, but I never ended up using them. Everything else though is pretty stock standard for Killing Floor. Do missions, kill zombies, after all the waves are finished you take on a boss, yippee, stats. But I will say in terms of the gameplay, I have been skimping out on two things that this game does differently from its predecessors. The first thing being a rather more petty addition for me personally, and that's the fact that your healing stims are now only limited to 3, with you needing to refill them at the merchant after each wave. And I have no idea why they would do this other than Estus flasks. The actual reason I do believe probably has something to do with the more refined controls. Having a constantly recharging stim might be a little bit OP, but I don't know, I like making jokes instead. And the second thing is the one thing that a lot of people were dreading about this game is the character exclusive special ability. Yes, everyone, this is where the game's hero shooter mechanics start to rear their ugly head, because for each operator that you pick, they'll have their own unique ability that they're going to be able to bring to the table. Dr. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends has this drone that he can send out to help take out the oncoming hordes. Devlin sending out this fiery shockwave. Imran turns into the Punisher from Marvel Rivals with the shockwave launcher that you can run around with for a limited time. Luna sending out what I can only describe as Yondu's arrow from Guardians of the Galaxy without needing to learn the pesky task of whistling. Nakate probably has my favorite ability out of the lot, being able to grapple into enemies a total of 3 times and bash their skulls in before needing to recharge. And finally, Obi puts down this pillar that emits healing farts. I love playing the medical class. I love medical classes. I love malpractice! And that's pretty much it for character abilities. Overall, I'm not too bothered by this inclusion because I thought it would lean way too heavily in a more hero shooter style like Overwatch or anything in that line, but I think these additions are fine personally. Oh, and one final thing I forgot to mention in terms of gameplay, this game has quick time events for when a zombie grabs you, and you can do glory kills, so yippee! Add another one thing that this game uses to the infringement chart. So that's basically Killing Floor 3. Overall, a pretty mid-zombie wave shooter that seems to have lost all its identity as to what made the series so beloved in the first place, in favor of Call of Duty. Yes, look at every single thing from selecting operators, the menu style, the weapon loadout customization, even the splash screen for when you load into the game. This game reeks of trying to cash in on what COD was able to capture, and look where that ended up leading them. But like I said, as a wave-based zombie shooter, it's just pretty damn mid, when you consider that even Black Ops 6 probably gave us one of the best zombie modes we've seen in ages. But for a Killing Floor game exclusively in a vacuum, this game just fucking sucks. And to further prove my point, I decided to load up both Killing Floor 1 and 2, and son of a bitch, where I ended up playing the beta for a total of like 2.5 hours before I decided to give up because I found no enjoyment from it. Playing Killing Floor 1 and 2 for just a single game, a singular game. I absolutely loved everything, from the powerful feeling guns, to the atmosphere of the stages, to the absolute stage variety, to the weapon variety, to the music and all of that shit. You can see that Killing Floor 1 and 2 were primarily passion projects and were designed to be fun as shit either alone or with a bunch of friends. And that's the thing I mentioned earlier in the video was useless. Why is the play solo option grayed out when this whole entire time I was able to pause and play alone? Like, what? Why is this grayed out? Is there anything I'm missing? And I am well aware that Killing Floor 1 and 2 are games that have got almost close to a decade worth of content added to them over time, whereas this game is just coming out in March. But my response to that would just be, Why even bother? Killing Floor 3 is one of the most beloved games in this entire series, and for good reason. It has the best gameplay, it has the best graphics, the best music, and so much variety in its core game that there was never really a need to make a third game. But that also leads us up to my biggest fear. I mean, just take a look at the comparisons. It's kinda obvious when you look at it, right? Niche but fun first game in the series, beloved second game in the series that people are still actively playing to this day, and mid-third game that ruins everything that made the previous game so special. And the guy wearing a mask, I guess. This game is shaping up to be just another Payday 3. And hell, the worst part about everything is that I think that Payday 3 at the very least was able to give me a good first impression when you compare it to this game. So hopefully by the time that Killing Floor 3 comes out, a lot of what I said here will just be a bad dream. But as of right now, I think I'd just rather stick to Killing Floor 2, and I think you guys should too. So thank you guys so much for watching.